Imagine waking up one morning to find a letter on your doorstep. No sender, no explanation, just a message. You are invited to unite our worlds. No, this isn't a dream or a sci-fi film. It's the true beginning of a journey that will take one man beyond the stars, into a marriage with a mysterious alien bride he's never seen, where silence speaks louder than words, and trust is the only light in the dark. Would you say yes, if the fate of two worlds depended on your answer? If you are new here, then please subscribe this channel and show thumbs up by liking the video. Let's move toward wonderful story. Rain tapped softly on the windows of a lonely cabin nestled by a quiet lake. Inside, Rowan Hale sat with a half-finished sketch in his lap, his pencil resting still against the paper. The smell of rain mixed with old wood filled the room, but he hardly noticed. For months now, he'd lived in this place alone, far from the city and farther still from the life he once knew. After losing his sister, his only family, Rowan had stepped away from everything. His job, his friends, the future he had planned. He painted and sketched now, not to create, but to feel anything at all. That afternoon, something strange broke the routine. A knock came at the door, sharp, deliberate, and completely unexpected. Rowan opened it to find no one there, only a small black envelope lying on the porch beaded with rain. He picked it up, noticing there was no stamp, no return address, no name, just a symbol pressed into the seal, a circle with 3 interlocking lines inside glowing faintly like moonlight. Curious and more than a little uneasy, Rowan brought the envelope inside. He sat at his table and broke the seal. Inside was a folded piece of thick parchment, the kind used for ceremonial invitations or ancient maps. The message written on it wasn't in any language he recognized. The letters curved and shimmered, shifting slightly when the paper moved. Beneath the strange script was a smaller line in English. You are invited to unite our worlds. Rowan stared at the words for a long time, then let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. It had to be some elaborate joke. Maybe a marketing stunt for a sci-fi show or an indie movie. He set it aside and tried to ignore it, but the envelope remained on his desk, catching the light and his attention for days. A week later, another envelope arrived. This time it was red, and the seal bore the same glowing symbol. Inside was a second message, equally strange, followed by a single question in English. Have you considered what your silence means? Rowan didn't answer, not because he didn't want to, but because he didn't know how. Who was sending these? Why him? The third letter arrived in a golden envelope with a lock of hair woven through the parchment, hair that shimmered in a way human hair shouldn't. The moment he touched it, he felt a pulse beneath his fingertips like a heartbeat. That was when Marin appeared. One rainy evening, as Rowan was sketching by candlelight, there came another knock, steady and calm. This time, when he opened the door, a tall man in a gray coat stood waiting. He looked human, but something about him was too precise. His posture too still. His eyes too sharp. Rowan Hale, the man said in a calm, clear voice. My name is Marin. I am here to discuss your future. Before Rowan could protest, Marin stepped inside, already removing his coat. We have been observing your responses, he said, setting a small glowing device on the table. And we believe you are ready. Ready for what? Rowan asked, still unsure whether to call the police or start laughing. A union, Marin replied. A joining of two worlds. You have been chosen. Rowan blinked. By who exactly? Not by me, Marin said, smiling slightly. By her. By her people. And by something greater that sees beyond what we know. For the next hour, Marin explained, slowly, carefully, how the leaders of Earth had made secret contact with a civilization far beyond the stars. How these beings, though powerful, sought peace through unity rather than domination, and how every few decades they selected someone from Earth to form a bond, a marriage, not as a political tool, but as a symbol of trust. Rowan laughed. He had to. The idea was absurd. He was just a man with a sketchbook and a lonely cabin, not some chosen hero or galactic ambassador. But Marin was calm and serious, unaffected by doubt. "It is not about who you are now," he said. "It is about what you represent. You are unbound, no family, no ties, and yet your thoughts, your emotions, they align with hers. It is rare." "Align?" Rowan echoed, unsettled. "What does that mean?" "You will understand in time," Marin said, standing to leave. "We will come for your answer in 7 days." As the door closed behind him, Rowan sat in silence, the letter still open on his desk. The rain hadn't stopped. It had become a constant now, a background rhythm to the strangeness of his life. He looked again at the first letter, then the second, and then the third. Part of him wanted to throw them into the fire and forget it all. Another part, one he hadn't listened to in years, whispered that maybe, just maybe, something incredible was waiting. For the first time in months, he didn't feel numb. He felt something stirring, wonder, fear, possibility. And as he looked out into the misty darkness beyond his porch, Rowan whispered to no one, "What if this is real?" Rowan stood at the edge of something he couldn't quite understand. The transport ship that brought him here, if it could even be called a ship, hovered above a sea of mist, silent and without engines. Its walls were soft like living fabric, pulsing gently around him almost as if it breathed. He felt weightless, not just physically, but emotionally too, as if all his past doubts had been suspended in this strange space between worlds. He had said yes. Not because he fully believed, but because part of him needed to know what lay beyond the edge of what he understood. That part had spoken louder than fear. When the ship descended, the clouds parted like opening curtains, revealing a sight that stopped his breath. The alien city stretched beneath him, floating above a glittering ocean that shimmered like liquid glass. Tall spires twisted toward the sky, their surfaces glowing softly with changing colors. Some buildings floated independently, drifting slowly across the air, connected by bridges of light. The air itself seemed alive, humming faintly, with energy, filled with scents and colors that shifted as Rowan moved. It was beautiful and overwhelming, like stepping inside a dream where nothing obeyed Earth's rules. He was greeted not by guards or officials, but by figures who bowed low and never spoke. Their eyes, if they were eyes, blinked horizontally and glowed pale green. They wore robes that changed color as they moved. One of them extended a long hand toward Rowan and led him into a narrow passageway that twisted like a vine. The floor beneath his feet was soft and warm, adjusting to his steps. No one explained anything. No one introduced themselves. Eventually, he arrived at a tall chamber where light dripped from the ceiling like slow-falling rain. There, standing alone, was Marin. He looked exactly as he had on Earth, still calm, still unshaken by the surreal surroundings. "Welcome, Rowan," he said, gesturing toward a floating chair that hovered a few inches off the ground. "You've arrived safely. That is the important part." Rowan didn't sit. He couldn't stop looking around. "Where am I? What is this place?" Marin tilted his head slightly. "You are in the capital of the Lunari Dominion. This city is called Thalryan. It floats above the Sea of Remembrance." "The Sea of what?" "It reflects emotion, not light. It is sensitive to the memories of those who walk above it." Marin gestured toward the glowing ocean below. "Our hosts wish to impress, but also to test." "Test what?" Rowan asked. "Your ability to adapt," Marin replied. "Your willingness to trust, and perhaps your capacity to feel beyond human limits." Before Rowan could respond, another figure entered the room. She was tall and willowy, her movements so smooth they looked more like gliding than walking. She wore no shoes. Her skin was pale with a silver tint, and her hair, long, dark, and almost fluid, seemed to shift shape in the air. "This is Nira," Marin said. "She is your guide and translator. She speaks not in your language but through sensation." Nira stepped forward, offering her hand. Rowan hesitated before taking it. The moment their skin touched, a wave of feeling washed over him. Not a word, not a thought, but something like music made of emotion. Sadness, curiosity, a cautious welcome. For the next 2 days, Neera led him through the city. She never spoke aloud, but her presence filled the silence. Rowan was shown the Hall of Memory, where past unions between humans and Lunari were honored with glowing murals that moved as you stared at them. He walked through gardens that sang with wind chimes made of leaves. He ate food that tasted different depending on what he was thinking about. One dish reminded him of summers with his sister, though he had no idea why. Another left him crying, overwhelmed by a memory he didn't recognize as his own. Still, no one let him see the one he had come to marry. Rowan asked Neera about her many times, but Neera only responded with a gentle wave of emotion. Patience, distance, protection. The union would happen soon, but not before the moment was right. Every time he pressed for more, Neera deflected with warmth, but also with firm boundaries. And then came the day of the rehearsal. Rowan was taken to a vast hall built into the sky itself, its walls made of floating glass panels. From up there, he could see the ocean of memory below, reflecting flickers of his past. Faces, moments, fears. The chamber was filled with others. Some human, many not, each wearing ceremonial garments. Rowan's robe was a soft, flowing material that clung to his skin like water but never soaked him. It shimmered with his every move, showing hues that changed with his heart rate. He was told to walk slowly down the central path, toward a great arch carved from a material that looked like bone and crystal. He did as instructed, but with every step, a quiet fear grew inside him. He didn't know her. He didn't know if she would even resemble anything he could love or trust. He didn't know what would happen if he failed, if he froze or panicked. What did union really mean here? As he reached the end of the path, the hall fell quiet. Every eye, whether human or glowing or something in between, was on him. And though the ceremony was still days away, Rowan knew something had changed. The sky had opened, and there was no turning back. Rowan stood at the center of the hall, heart pounding, wrapped in a robe that shimmered like moonlight on water. Around him, a quiet hush fell over the crowd. It wasn't the kind of silence born from boredom or expectation. It was sacred, heavy, and alive with anticipation. The walls of the ceremonial chamber, made of glass that floated and turned like slow-moving clouds, pulsed gently with a soft inner light. Overhead, twin orbs hovered where a ceiling might have been, casting waves of color that moved in rhythm with the music, if it could be called that. The sound wasn't played through instruments. It came from the air itself, vibrating like the soft hum of a distant storm, or the feeling you get right before something changes forever. This was it, the moment Rowan had tried to imagine, but could never fully grasp. He had agreed to a marriage without meeting his bride, without hearing her voice or even knowing what species she truly was. The idea had seemed impossible on Earth, like something from a storybook. Now it was as real as the cool floor beneath his feet and the pendant resting against his chest. An emblem of unity, glowing faintly as if aware of the role it played. The Yaoim guests were unlike any group Rowan had ever seen. Some were human, dressed in their finest with curious eyes and nervous smiles. Others were taller, draped in robes that floated a few inches off the ground, their faces hidden behind smooth, featureless masks. Even more appeared barely physical, shapes of light and color that drifted like smoke, but held form and presence. No one spoke. No one needed to. The silence held them all together. Rowan's eyes were fixed on the far end of the hall where an arch stood glowing, its edges alive with flickering symbols that danced like fireflies. That was where she would come from. His bride. His match. The one chosen for him by beings he still didn't fully understand. He shifted slightly, unsure if his legs would hold. For all his doubts, all his fears, there was something inside him that wanted to see her, wanted to believe this wasn't a mistake. Then, The light shifted. A low vibration passed through the hall, not through the floor but through the air itself. It was a sound that wasn't heard. It was felt. Every guest bowed their heads. Rowan remained standing, frozen, watching as something began to move behind the arch. She emerged slowly, wrapped in a gown that shimmered like liquid silver, flowing around her as if it were part of her body. A veil covered her face, but the fabric was thin and constantly shifting, revealing and hiding glimpses of her features. Her steps were slow, deliberate, and each one seemed to carry a silent message. She was not like anyone Rowan had ever seen, not even in the wildest dreams of science fiction. Her form was delicate but strong, her presence more than physical. It pressed against the space around her like warmth from a fire. As she drew closer, Rowan felt an odd pull in his chest, as if something was trying to lift him from the inside. It wasn't fear, it was something else. Connection, maybe, or the first hints of understanding. When she reached him, she stopped just inches away. The veil shifted, revealing soft lips, high cheekbones, and a faint glow that traced the lines of her face like a map drawn in starlight. She raised a hand. It was slender and smooth, her fingers ending in delicate tips that shimmered like opals. She reached for him, not quickly, but with calm certainty. Rowan responded, his own hand trembling slightly as he took hers. The moment their skin touched, a spark passed between them. It wasn't electricity, it was emotion. A wave of it. Sadness, curiosity, hope, and something he couldn't name but felt down to his bones. A figure stepped forward, cloaked in robes that moved like liquid gold. This was the officiant. They spoke in a language Rowan didn't know, but the meaning filled the room like a song that didn't need lyrics. Their words rose and fell, accompanied by soft tones that rang through the air like chimes stirred by the wind. Each vow was spoken, then echoed in silence, an acknowledgement that words were not always enough. Rowan felt the weight of each moment, each gesture. He glanced at her, his bride, and found her watching him, her eyes deep pools of moving light. There was something ancient in them, something kind. The rings were brought forward by attendants in glowing cloaks. Rowan took his first, a small band that pulsed gently in his hand as if alive. He placed it on her finger and the ring melted slightly, forming to her skin like it belonged there. She did the same, and Rowan gasped quietly as the ring touched. His skin, it hummed and warmth spread from his hand to his chest. Then came the final step, the veil. With careful hands, one of her attendants lifted it. The room seemed to hold its breath. And when her face was fully revealed, Rowan felt the world tilt. She was beautiful, yes, but not in a way that could be compared to anything human. Her features were sharp and soft all at once, shifting gently, like the surface of water catching the sun. Her eyes were galaxies, endless and searching. But it wasn't her appearance that left him speechless. It was what he saw behind it. Strength, sadness, longing, and maybe, just maybe, the same uncertainty he felt. The officiant said a final phrase that Rowan didn't understand, but something in it vibrated in his chest like truth. The guests bowed again. The ceremony was complete. Rowan and his new bride turned to face the crowd, still hand in hand. Together they stepped down from the platform, the music of silence wrapping around them like a promise. But as they walked, Rowan knew this wasn't the end. It wasn't even the beginning. It was the opening of a door, and behind it, everything was about to change. The walk to their private quarters felt longer than any journey Rowan had taken before. Not in distance, but in thought. He and his new wife moved side by side through curved hallways made of glowing walls that pulsed with soft colors. The light shifted with their steps, guiding them forward. Neither of them spoke, but the silence wasn't empty. It was filled with questions, nerves, and the strange energy that had been building since the moment their hands touched. The room they entered was unlike anything Rowan had ever imagined. It was large and open, with walls that seemed alive, gently moving like calm waves. The floor was soft underfoot, changing shape slightly with each step to support them. The furniture wasn't placed. It grew from the floor itself, smooth and seamless. In the center stood a bed, wide and low, glowing faintly from underneath like moonlight trapped beneath water. Floating orbs circled above, giving off a hum that matched Rowan's heartbeat. She turned to him then, her face unreadable but calm. Rowan realized he still didn't know her name. No one had told him, and she hadn't spoken. Maybe her name wasn't something that could be said in words. She reached out again, just as she had in the ceremony, and touched his chest, right above his heart. The warmth of her fingers sent a wave through him. It wasn't just a physical sensation. It felt like she was searching inside him. Quietly, gently, trying to find something deeper. Rowan stood still, letting her touch rest there. When she stepped back, she raised a hand toward a floating orb. It pulsed brighter, then began to shimmer with light. Shapes and colors appeared inside it. Images, memories. Rowan saw fields of tall blue grass under twin suns. He saw structures that bent like wind and creatures that glided without wings. Then he saw something that made his breath catch. A picture of himself sitting in his cabin by the lake alone with his sketchbook. He realized then what the orb was doing. It was showing him what she saw, her memories, her thoughts, her understanding of him. She was sharing. The images faded and the orb returned to its soft glow. She turned to him and pointed gently toward his chest again, then toward the orb. Rowan hesitated. "You want mine?" he asked. She nodded, once. Slowly, carefully, he stepped closer to the orb and placed his hand on it. He thought of his sister, her laugh, the sound of the lake outside their home, the day she was gone. He thought of the letters, the cabin, the strange feeling of being called across the stars. The orb reacted, flashing images in return, his memories, his fears, his pain. But then, as the images faded, it began to hum with a different tone, warmer, more hopeful. She reached out and took his hand again, her eyes filled with something softer now. Understanding. Trust. In the days that followed, Rowan and his wife, he learned to call her Marin, the closest version he could pronounce, continued to grow closer. They spoke not with words, but with touches, gestures, and the help of the orb. Each evening, they shared thoughts and memories through it, building something like a language between them. Rowan taught her to draw, using simple lines to create pictures of Earth's skies and trees. She taught him how to hear the emotions in the air, how to move in rhythm with the sounds of their living space. Still, it wasn't always easy. There were moments of silence that stretched too long, filled with confusion or frustration. Rowan struggled with her rituals, some of which made no sense to him. She, in turn, didn't always understand his need for humor, for comfort in the meaningless. Once, when he tried to make her laugh with a silly face, she tilted her head and asked through the orb, "Why distort your expression when sadness is not present?" He had no answer that made sense to her, but over time they found their balance. They created routines, shared food, shared rest, and slowly shared more of themselves. Rowan discovered that Marin sometimes watched him sleep, her face calm, but focused as though trying to learn him even in stillness. He no longer feared her gaze. Instead, he welcomed it. One night, as they sat on the bed, palms resting against the orb, Marin looked into his eyes and pressed her forehead gently to his. The orb flared, brighter than ever before. Images came not in single flashes but in waves, memories from both of them blending, merging. In that moment, Rowan didn't just see her world or feel her thoughts. He understood something new. He wasn't here to save anyone. He wasn't chosen to fix or solve or represent. He was here because he could learn, because he was willing to try. The gift she had given him wasn't her hand or her home. It was the chance to be something more than what he had been. And the gift he gave in return wasn't just his memories. It was his choice to stay, to care, to connect. As the light faded and the room returned to its soft, glowing peace, they remained close, hands still linked, the orb now quiet. For the first time in what felt like forever, Rowan felt still inside. Not lost, not confused. He didn't understand everything, he didn't need to. Some gifts are meant to be unwrapped slowly.